My research is in biomedical engineering, so that means it's at the intersection of engineering and medicine. My research focuses on aging, which is a process that affects all of us.
So my research is focused on developing solar cell that has the potential to replace the dependence of fossil fuel.
So my research is in law, and it's focused in international human rights law, and specifically on the international human right to health.
I study Atlantic Canadian history, and specifically I study the writings and diaries of maritime seafaring women.
My research uses literary analysis and cultural history to investigate Black Canadian writing in the first half of the 20th century.
I'm doing a thesis project on implementing Staphylococcus aureus screening and decolonization in our cardiac surgery patients here in Halifax.
As we age, there are some effects such as neurodegeneration and effects on our cognitive abilities such as memory and fluid intelligence. The aim of my research is to understand the processes within the brain activity that might contribute to these declines with age.
This kind of solar cells are very unique. They have surpassed the efficiency and the performance of silicon solar cell that we all know, and they have the potential to be much cheaper, therefore more affordable. And my work is focused on making them more reliable and more environmentally friendly.
And so it's generally focused on conceptualizing how the international human right to health can be understood in terms of what it really means for individuals in Canada. It focuses domestically on the right to health for Canadians, and then on the external side of things, it's looking at what obligations Canada has and Canadian policymakers have when they're making decisions that can affect the right to health abroad, specifically in the context of recruiting health professionals from abroad to work in Canada.
Often in this age of exploration in the Victorian period, women are excluded as agents of this really critical moment in globalization and global history. But I try to reintroduce the voices of these rural women and help define how they shaped the modern world we live in today. So I hope that my work will not only share women's stories, but women and girls can look to these histories and find themselves in the past.
That period remains the least studied of all periods for Black writing in Canada, and it's also widely considered a low point of race relations here, a time when Black communities faced worsening discrimination and deteriorating social and economic conditions. But when we look to the archives, we find that the same period witnessed the emergence of new and innovative literary forms, from poetry collections and political tracts in the 1910s to collections of Black Nova Scotian folklore in the 1930s. These writers responded to those conditions, and in so doing they imparted new meanings to the relationship between literature and social life.
Staphylococcus aureus is a bacteria that can be commonly found in anyone's nose or on their skin. We know that from the research that approximately 40% of surgical site infections in cardiac surgery are caused by this type of bacteria. So what we're doing with our study is we're testing patients before surgery to see if they actually have that bug that normally sits in their nose. And if they're positive for it, then we're treating them with a special antibiotic ointment to get rid of that before the surgery. The impact that we hope to achieve is to help continue to decrease those surgical site infections that our cardiac surgery patients can experience.
Receiving a Killam scholarship is an honor. I feel very grateful and fortunate to have been selected as one of the recipients of this award.
It was really wonderful to find out that I had received it, and it evoked a sense of profound gratitude for it. Of course, financially, it means a lot, but it also provided this sort of boost to me that the research that I'm doing is on a topic that other people find interesting and could potentially be important.
My goal is to continue on this path, to hopefully after graduation to continue doing research on solar cells.
With my experience from my thesis, I hope to take this implementation science approach into my future academic career and help translate our research into clinical practice in healthcare.
To receive a Killam scholarship felt like someone saying, you do belong here, you do deserve to be here. It was a tremendous honor to receive a Killam scholarship.
It's my pleasure to welcome you to this year's annual Killam celebration, where we recognize Dalhousie's best and brightest, our Killam graduate scholars, postdoctoral fellows, postgraduate medical scholars, professors, chairs, and prize winners, and alumni. Before we begin with the actual celebration, I would like to take a moment to invite Elder Anne Labilois to the stage. Elder Anne.
Kwe, can everyone hear me? Nin Dalhousie, Anne Labilois. Hello, my name is Anne Labilois. I'm a Mi'kmaq from northern New Brunswick. My community is called Upigunchik, and the English name is Eel River Bar. At one time, years ago, our community used to bubble with eels in the water. And my memory of that is when I see the sun shining on the water, glistening like diamonds, it brings me back to that moment when I used to watch the eels in the water and the sun would glisten off of their backs. So those are the kind of memories that I remember. And today, well, you can't find an eel. So that has made me aware of how everything always changes. Everything. And we have to take the moment and appreciate the moment as it is. So I want to say congratulations. Oh my goodness, watching this video. When I first came to school here 5 years ago, it was a dream that I would possibly be a university student, that I could possibly even think of such a thing. And when I did get accepted, I remember calling the registrar and asking them, "Are you sure you have the right application? Like, I don't know too much and you accepted me." And they were like, "Yeah, we have the right one." So here I am today, 5 years later. I'm very honored indeed. And I'm the elder in residence here at Dalhousie. I've been in this position now for 2 years to help the Indigenous students and anyone else who needs just someone to share a moment with, because life can get pretty hard. Life just keeps on going and things just keep on happening, and we need each other to help each other. I always refer us to the forest, because the forest, in my eyes, and in my heart, is the only true place of true harmony and true diversity. Because everything in a forest is different. Different shapes, different colors, different sizes, different textures, but yet it sustains itself. It's been sustaining itself for billions of years before we even came along. And so an elder told me that years ago, that was the lesson we had to learn how to do. How to nurture each other, how to care for each other and take care of each other, just like the forest takes care of itself. So you'll hear that in the prayer that I say later. Excuse me. So I'm going to share with you what I have found that my ancestors, and I'm sure many other ancestors have did many years ago, was when they sat with the land, not just on it, but they sat with it. So sitting with it meant that they became one with the land. They could hear it and they could see it, not only just with their ears, but they could hear it with their being, in their spirit, in their eyes. They knew how the medicines worked. They understood how the animals lived and how they took care of themselves and how they governed themselves. So these, in nature, are really the truth of what harmony is. And again, that's where we need to learn our lessons from, when we learn how to listen And to learn to listen means to listen with the whole being. So I'm just going to share with you for a moment. And this is, you're going to be meeting your breath, your sacred breath that I say, that was given to each and every one of us. Spirit doesn't judge. Spirit includes all of nature, all of mankind, without any hesitation. No matter what it is we do, or what we've developed into, sometimes we change as our journey goes along, and sometimes we get distracted. And that's perfectly fine, because that's what happens. That's how growth continues on. So I'm going to ask you to just close your eyes for a moment, and if you're not comfortable doing that, that's perfectly fine. But I'm going to have you meet your breath, which is something that we don't do. We almost have to make an appointment to be able to meet our breath, because we don't breathe on our own. So it's quite the gift that we need to say thank you and just be with it for just a moment. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And as you feel yourself sitting in your seat, your physical being talks to you all the time. You'll feel a sensation of your feet on the floor. You'll feel yourself sitting in your chair, the contact that you make with the chair, and wherever your hands fall, whether it be on your lap or on the chair, it makes that contact feeling. So right now, as like a newborn baby does, I'm going to ask you to take a breath in through your nostrils very gently and naturally, and feel it as it goes in to your being, and how it just seems to explode inside and covers everything in an instant, giving life to you. So let's try that. Take a breath in and let that breath out through your nostrils very gently and naturally. Take a breath in and allow that breath to release. Take a breath in, a new breath every time. And now when you release it, allow your shoulders to fall, to melt, a sense of relief. One more time, this breath in, and this breath out. And now just sit with the one who gives you your breath, and just be the best that you can be, just for a moment. So what you're doing is paying attention on purpose to this moment. And if you discover that you're still thinking, that your mind is always thinking, and that's what it does, but we can help tame it, and we can help change the relationship with our memories and the thoughts that come, by becoming aware of what it is we're thinking. Are we planning? Are we remembering something from the past? Or are we just thinking? Whatever it is, you can look at it and say, oh, I know what you are. Maybe I'm feeling sorry for myself. Maybe I'm judging something, myself or someone else, or criticizing, or sadness, whatever it is. You can take that thought and you can place it on a cloud. And you can allow that cloud to take it away. And you tell that thought, I don't need you in this moment right now. And don't worry, that thought will come back because it's yours. But for this moment, you don't need it. And you bring yourself back to your breath. Come back to my breath. This breath in. And this breath out. And relax my shoulders. And just be. O great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the wind, whose breath gives life to all. Help me, 'cause I need your strength. I am young and small and weak. Take my hands and show me how to respect the beautiful things you have created, including myself. Take my feet and guide me so that I can find that path that is filled full of love, compassion, strength, forgiveness, understanding, wisdom, honesty, joy, forgiveness, and peace. Help me to conquer the greatest enemy, myself, and help me to learn the lessons you have placed in every leaf and rock, so I can learn these teachings and bring them back to the people, so that when my eyes fade like the setting sun, my spirit can come to you without shame. Tahoe. So now you can slowly open your eyes. And the sensation you'll feel when you open your eyes is different from when we're always busy and scurrying around. Because you're allowing your whole being, you're allowing you as a creation to do exactly what it is you're supposed to do, the most beautiful thing, by just taking a moment. So I often say the best way to practice this, because of the world we live in, is either when you're driving, but please don't close your eyes, and at Costco. Seriously. When you're standing in the lines and the chaos is just all around you and the busyness, and you bring yourself to your breath just for a moment, it's amazing. The peace that we can find, and we can continue on. So Walalio, and congratulations to everyone who has put their best heart forward. And I think it's just so wonderful that we have the capability to do this. Walalio.
Thank you, Elder Ann, for that wonderful welcome and lesson. And I really appreciate helping to recenter and be present in the moment. So I do appreciate that coming into this. Truth and reconciliation continues to be a core pillar of the ongoing work and journey together here at Dalhousie. I'd like to begin our celebration today by acknowledging that Dalhousie is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which the Mi'kmaq and the Wolastoqey people first signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not include the surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqey rights to unsurrendered territory and established the rules for an ongoing relationship between nations. We will continue to work on and build on these critically important relationships and friendships because we are all treaty people. It is now my pleasure to welcome some special guests who are joining us here today. I'd like to welcome our Killam trustee representative, Mr. Bernie Miller, the managing trustee of the Killam Trust, and George Cooper, who's down in the crowd, former Killam and managing trustee. I'd also like to thank our acting provost, Marty Leonard, and Cheryl Fraser, Dalhousie Board of Governors, for joining us today. And of course, thank you to our numerous Killam scholars, fellows, and alumni who are joining us for the celebration. Again, thank you so much for committing to the Killam legacy and for all of you being here today. So we're going to start things off today by welcoming our first Beyond Brilliant Killam Scholar Spotlights. The Beyond Brilliant Spotlights explores the spirit of the Killam laureates and scholarships through the stories of the research, masters, PhD, postdoctoral fellows, and chairs who are undertaking unique and thought-provoking research. Borrowing the term from the Killam Laureate organization, Beyond Brilliant illustrates how these scholars are upholding the enduring values of the Killam laureates: research excellence, innovation, humanity, and multidisciplinary collaboration. Our first speaker is Killam postdoctoral scholar at the master's level, Constadina Rogers. Dina recently took part in the International 2024 Falling Walls Lab Pitch Competition, where her presentation took first place in the Science Breakthrough of the Year in the Emerging Talents category. To put this in context, this is a global competition with over 100 candidates competing at the international level, and it's the second year in a row Dalhousie has won, and it's an amazing accomplishment that we couldn't be more proud of for what Dina has accomplished with this. Dina's research focuses on enhancing plastic degradation through protein engineering. Recently discovered bacteria protein, PETAs, is capable of naturally degrading plastics. However, its activity is inefficient for practical application. Dina's research focuses on the production and characterization of PETAs hydrophobin fusion proteins. Fusion of PETAs to these mushroom derivative proteins increases its efficiency to create unique biological recycling processes. Dina's presentation is titled Using Protein Engineering to Enhance Plastic Degradation. At this moment, please welcome our presenter, Dina, to the stage.
I had to watch the stairs. I'm not sure if any of you were here in September, but I fell down the stairs before I pitched up Falling Walls. Kalispera, good afternoon. Thank you all for having me. I feel like this all started, about 8 months and 5 times ago when I went, it's only 3 minutes and I get to talk about my research. But it's genuinely an honor. 80 million garbage trucks. That's the amount of plastic used by the food and beverage packaging industry every year. A major component of this plastic is polyethylene terephthalate, also known as PET. PET is recyclable, but only 9% of it is. The unrecycled 91% has a devastating impact on our environment. By 2050, there will be more plastic than fish in our oceans. Plastic alternatives do exist, but they're on average 4 times more expensive, and they don't address current plastic accumulation. My research focuses on the development of a biological recycling process that degrades and repurposes PET through protein engineering. This is the point where most people go, Dina, protein is what I put in my shaker at the gym. It builds muscle. What does that have to do with plastic pollution? That's valid. So let me explain. How many of us are familiar with Pac-Man? The little chompy guy who runs around. Oh, okay, a lot. Bacteria naturally secrete a protein, a little Pac-Man, that can degrade plastic, with one caveat. It's like Pac-Man without its superpower. It's really bad at sticking to the plastic. But we found a solution in mushrooms, which is a little counterintuitive because we all like to eat mushrooms for the most part. But they produce this sticky protein called a hydrophobin. By fusing the hydrophobin to the plastic degrading protein, you allow that plastic degrading protein to stick to and degrade plastic. So imagine a world where every plastic package could be degraded and repurposed rather than accumulating in our environment. This world functions on a circular economy that degrades and repurposes PET but also other materials through this protein engineering process, hopefully in the future. This gives us a way to degrade PET and, email? This gives us a way to degrade PET and plastic in general that is environmentally friendly, efficient, and economical. But how does Killam fit into this big picture? So, I've put a lot of thought into this because, at the end of the day, I'm a master's student and, I need funding to do my research and that is kind of it. But, it gives access to this network. Oh, no clicker, maybe not. Oh, there we go. It gives access to this network across disciplines, fostering collaborations on an academic scale that you wouldn't have access to regardless otherwise. On a personal level, to be honest with you all, I probably wouldn't be here without it. The simple truth is that I put myself through my undergraduate working several jobs and come from a big Greek family where there are no scientists. So it really allowed me to fully commit to research. It's provided resources and spaces to be innovative. Because of this time, I haven't had to spend doing other things to support myself. And most recently, that's a privilege that led me to, 3-minute thesis and then falling walls in Berlin. Few scientists receive this public spotlight. And at a very young age, I've been fortunate to have this opportunity. One that without Killam, I really wouldn't have had the time, exposure, space, or resources to put into. To all of the other scholars in this room, here's to all of you pursuing research excellence, an amazing support network, and aspiring to change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana, for your presentation. At this point, I'd like to welcome our next guest to the stage, Mr. Bernie Miller, Managing Trustee of the Killam Trust, and Dr. Marty Leonard, Acting Provost. Mr. Miller and Dr. Leonard will discuss the unique relationship enjoyed by the Killam trustees and Dalhousie University. While they're taking their seats, please take a moment to view the Killam 50th anniversary video.
In 1965, the future of education in Canada was forever changed for the better when Isaac Walton Killam and Dorothy Brooks Johnston Killam put into place a philanthropic plan they had discussed during their joint lifetimes. The resulting Killam legacy would provide the funding to allow Canadians and peoples from around the world to pursue higher education in Canada. Mrs. Killam was a vibrant but shrewd person who enjoyed entertaining and swimming at an Olympic caliber. She was born and raised in the United States and came to Montreal in her 20s, where she met her future husband, industrialist and financier Isaac Walton Killam. I.W., an avid angler, was as private as Dorothy was vivacious. From a humble family in Nova Scotia, he moved to Montreal and began acquiring industries across the country and internationally, predominantly in power and pulp and paper. He died in 1955, leaving approximately $50 million to the government, which they agreed to use to help launch the Canada Council for the Arts, helping the Killams to have as much of an impact on the arts and culture of this country as they later would on higher education. Upon Mrs. Killam's death, the Killam Trusts were created, a private charitable bequest intended to perpetually fund education at the graduate level and above in Canada. In the words of Mrs. Killam's will, "My purpose in establishing the Killam Trust is to help in the building of Canada's future by encouraging advanced study. Thereby, I hope in some measure to increase the scientific and scholastic attainments of Canadians, to develop and expand the work of Canadian universities, and to promote sympathetic understanding between Canadians and the peoples of other countries." By giving Dalhousie the largest portion of the gift, a nod to her late husband's Nova Scotian roots, Dorothy Killam was instrumental in supporting the university's transformation from a little college by the sea into a national university with a robust research agenda. Her inspiration to champion graduate student research was encouraged in 1965 when she toured the lab of Dalhousie master's student Art MacDonald, a brilliant young researcher who went on to win the Nobel Prize for Physics in 2015. She took great interest in his work. MacDonald recalls saying, "I had no idea that this would have any positive significance in terms of the future of support for research in universities, but of course it did." The Killam Trusts marked their 50th anniversary last fall. At Dalhousie, they have provided more than $85 million in funding to almost 1,800 graduate students and postdoctoral fellows, enabling them to make a difference in fields as varied as immigration policy, climate change, and cancer research. One such student was Dr. Nicole Ward, an associate professor at Case Western Reserve University, who has gained international notice for her work studying cardiovascular disease. Dr. Ward noted that her scholarship was a launch pad for success, saying receiving it was like being told, "You have that it factor." That recognition was a stepping stone for every award or grant I've been given since, because I had already been vetted by something as prestigious as the Killam Trusts. Along with its support of graduate researchers, the Killam Trusts provide funds that ensure Dalhousie is able to attract and retain top-level professors and researchers. After more than 50 years, has the Killam's original gift of $103 million, or over $750 million in today's dollars, lived up to their vision? More than $1 billion have been spent in support of over 5,500 awardees, and Canada has become a well-respected destination for higher education. We will continue to work to ensure that this perpetual trust continues to honour the Killam's legacy and positively impacts Canada's future. I am Eliza Killam, one of IW's younger relatives. In their memory, I'd like to welcome all of you to the family. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome Bernie to the stage today, and many of you will have met Bernie over the years, hopefully at Killam events. So we were given, I think of it a little bit as a challenge, which is I'm going to ask a bunch of questions about the relationship between Dalhousie and the Killam Trust. And as Eliza already referred to, we have a history, and it's a nice history with the Killam Trusts. So we should think of this like a 3-minute thesis, right? I'm going to fire, you're going to fire back. Somebody wants to time us? That would be good. Okay, here we go. Why are the Killam Trusts so special to you personally?
Well, I think the key reason I'm inspired by the Killam Trust is the belief in the concept of Canada as a nation, and also the potential of Canada as a nation. That's something that Mrs. Killam really believed in, and taking our role in the international community of nations. So the Killam Trusts originated in the 1960s, as did I. And there was actually a point in time where Mrs. Killam was living in Montreal and I was living in Montreal. I was literally cutting my teeth, and she was at the later stages of thinking what she would do with the wealth that she and her husband Isaac had accumulated in their lifetime. And the key point was she saw it as held in trust for the benefit of the people of Canada. And she wanted to find a way to give back to Canadians, and the Killam Trust was the way she chose to do it. And she was an American, as you heard. She came to Montreal in the 1920s, but during her lifetime she realized that Canada has so much potential. And in the 1960s, in Montreal, where she and I were both living, and I was very young and she was at the later stages of her life, there was a spirit in Canada because we had our 100th year of since the British North America Act, as it was then called. And the belief was we were a young country and we had so much potential, and importantly, we were not the United States. And we represented a different, culturally different, and more inspiring part of North America. I think that's what she believed as an American who came to Canada. And she embraced that spirit of Canada's potential And in 1965, in her will, after testing things out, we'll talk about Art MacDonald in a second, but after testing it out, she thought advanced research and study was the best way to build Canada's future, and she put everything they had, which is the equivalent of $700 million today, behind that inspiring goal.
I love that, Bernie. It's perfect. All right, question number 2. Why did the Killams have a special relationship with Dalhousie?
Well, that's a good question. Now, Isaac Walton Killam was from Yarmouth, as you've heard, and Yarmouth at one point in time was one of the largest shipbuilding towns, communities in the entire eastern seaboard, not just the Canadian eastern seaboard. So it had achieved great potential itself, and the Killam family actually was a very significant shipbuilding family during the heyday of the growth of wood, wind, and sail. But Isaac kind of missed that plateau, and Yarmouth was on the decline by the time he was in his early years, so he relocated to Halifax and subsequently to Montreal to prosper. But he always felt great loyalty to Nova Scotia. And his biographer said he was loyal to his province and his country, and in putting together the thinking and structure of the will, Mrs. Killam wanted to reflect both the commitment to Nova Scotia and the commitment to the will, the commitment to the country. So in her will, she made sure that the largest proportion of the trust came to here, Dalhousie, and then the other portions went to the other provinces of Canada where they had significant business holdings. Now, Henry Hicks was the president of Dal at the time, and Mrs. Killam had relocated to Halifax from Montreal, and I'm sure he did his very best to convince her to put 100% into Dal, but Mrs. Killam knew what she wanted, so she went with the 60-40 split, if I can put it that way. And there were other influential people in that early days forging the relationship with Dalhousie. So Dr. Henry Hicks, as I mentioned, president at the time, Donald McGuinness, who was the senior partner of McGuinness, Cooper and Robertson when I joined, was a very close associate of Mrs. Killam's personal lawyer. So Mrs. Killam would say things to her lawyer, Don Byers, like, get McGuinness on the phone, and they constantly were reforming the will, and ultimately they settled on, despite Henry Hicks' efforts, a national and provincial focus of their endowments. And I should also mention that another influential person who worked with Donald McGuinness was George Cooper, who's here today, who when I was a very young lawyer, he was my mentor, and when I was a middle-aged lawyer, he was my mentor. And now that I'm an old lawyer, he's my even older mentor. And I've really appreciated working with George, especially on Killam matters, because in law, you do things you have to do, and you do things you love to do, but the Killams is something we both love to do.
Yeah, and both of you have touched this to our benefit. Too bad we don't have the whole afternoon, because I had some follow-up questions, but I don't think that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'll move now to the next question. What would Isaac and Dorothy Killam think of the legacy that the Killam scholarships have provided to generations of researchers?
Well, that's also a good question. And with Isaac Walton Killam, it's really hard to say. He was intensely shy, never gave a speech, almost never left any written record of what he thought or what he believed, other than what was reflected in Mrs. Killam's expression of their desires. He was so shy that in the 1920s, in the depth of the Great Depression, he had taken a huge financial risk in Nova Scotia by financing the Mersey paper mill, pulp and paper mill. And during a depression, and he'd had a business failure in 1921, and this was his next big investment, also in pulp and paper, which was the first one was. And it turned out to be so important for the province at the time, which was struggling economically. The premier of the day, Edgar Rhodes, arranged a grand event to coincide with the opening of the mill, and Isaac was going to give a speech, and it was a big thing because Isaac was going to give a speech. And the day of the speech, he phoned and said he had a sore eye, and therefore he couldn't give his speech. Now, I would have gone with sore throat.
Yeah, throat for sure.
So he was intensely shy, so I don't really know what he would think. But now Mrs. Killam left quite a record, and she has a reputation that survives her quite well. For example, when she moved to Nova Scotia in the mid-1960s, 1964, she moved specifically to help plan and coordinate the Isaac Walton Killam Hospital, which they also endowed. And what she liked, and what she didn't like, and she said so. So here's what I think Mrs. Killam would think. I'm channeling Mrs. Killam. I think she'd be so impressed with what we just heard about recycling, the Pac-Man and the plastic bottles. That would impress her. I think she would be so impressed with the individual accomplishments of the scholars who have been supported by the Killam Trusts. Where she may be a little bit more ambitious for us, and where she may think we as trustees need to push a little harder, is that collective national vision of building Canada's future with this endowment that goes from coast to coast. So I think she'd be so delighted with the individual accomplishments and so impressed by the time and attention people can devote to their research because of the Killam funding. And she'd also want us as trustees to continue to push for national impact.
Yeah, thank you. So, next question. Only one more after this. The Killam Trust have supported more than 8,500 individuals across Canada. Is there one chair or one scholar that stands out to you?
There's one, and I'll be a little repetitive from the presentation, but Dr. Art MacDonald very much exemplifies the type of local, national, global, international stepping stone impact that Mrs. Killam would have aspired to have.
I wonder if everyone here knows who Art MacDonald is.
Yeah. So Dr. Art MacDonald, I'll start early on. He met Mrs. Killam in the 1960s when she was trying to decide what to do with this large estate. She was scouting out ideas, and she went to his lab here at Dalhousie. He was taking physics. I think he was either master's or PhD level at that time. And she walked into his lab and said, "Show me an electron." And he spent a lot of time with her, and he said she was very intellectually curious. He had a Killam fellowship in the course of his career, and then he ultimately won the Killam Prize in, George probably remembers better than me, but I think it was around 2012, and 3 years later he won the Nobel Prize for his work in atomic physics. Yeah, so there's so many of them and so many accomplishments, but in terms of naming one who's gone from student to researcher to global recognition, Art MacDonald's the person. And the other thing I'd say, just at the Killam Prizes at Massey College, I had the privilege to sit across the table from him, and what a beautiful person, a pleasant man, just so nice and so humble. I started the conversation by saying, I took physics for poets. So I wanted to kind of lower any expectations on the conversation, but he was just delightful. And he sends his regards to George, and he sends his regards to his BFF, Peter Nicholson, and he's a Nova Scotian too, so all those things make him a very memorable person.
Perfect. I would totally agree. Now, lastly, what is something you think everyone in this room should know about the Killam Trusts?
Well, we spend a lot of time talking about the past because we're proud of where the Killam Trust came from, but we're all about the future. The Killam Trust today continues to be about building Canada's future by investing in the best and the brightest and advanced research and study. So our interest, and I think where Mrs. Killam would push us as her trustees, is although we honor the past, we should be really focused on the future. And the people that are in the room today that have some support from the Killam Trust, now that you're part of the Killam family, as Eliza Killam put it, the expectations Mrs. Killam would have for all of us is that we continue to help in some way in building Canada's future through advanced study. And I'm sure she'd want to congratulate you all and thank you for what you do every day. And I think that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Bernie. There's
Thank you, Mr. Miller and Dr. Leonard. So at this point, we're going to introduce you to the Killam programs at Dalhousie University. This should give you a good sense of just how much the Killam Trust support for Dalhousie's research and endeavors has occurred over the last, well, several decades. Today, I have the pleasure of sharing the Killam Memorial Chairs, the Killam Prizes in the Faculty of Science, and 3 unique Killam programs, Faculty of Medicine, Killam Predoctoral, and Postdoctoral Scholarships. First, let's highlight the Isaac Killam Memorial Chairs program. This program provides Dalhousie with significant support to sustain the success of leading scholars in our academic community, both early career and established. As innovation leaders in our academic community, our Killam Memorial Chairs act as catalysts, drawing new faculty and student talent, forging global connections and collaborations, and igniting the formation of dynamic hubs for research. This includes Dr. Gianna Parsons-Lay, who has established a cross-national research program focused on optimizing public health emergency preparedness in Canada. Another email. With an eye to helping us meet the challenge of our next health crisis. Dr. Mita Desag is internationally recognized for her research that promises to have significant global impact on issues such as fossil fuel dependence and access to fresh water. And Dr. Kevin Plucknett, who's helping to establish Dalhousie as a leader in advanced materials that promises to help humanity meet challenges in everything from energy to healthcare. Kevin will take the stage a little later to share a presentation on his ongoing research, which I've heard is 5 slides and very condensed, so it's going to be great. The investment made by the Killam Trust and the Killam Memorial Chairs program have a profound impact on shaping our research environment, seeing the ground for the future, and looking for discoveries and thought leaders. It is a legacy that would make Dorothy Killam proud. Next, I'd like to share an update regarding the Killam Trusts in the form of the Killam Professorships and the annual Faculty of Science Killam Prize. Killam Professorships were created to recognize the outstanding achievements of established researchers, while the Killam Prize enhances the careers of promising young researchers. The Killam Trust funding received by Killam professors and Killam Prize winners is often used to support graduate students and their research endeavors. For many years, Killam Trust funding has helped support both grad students and faculty members as they work to achieve great things. So on behalf of everyone in the Faculty of Science, I do want to thank the Killam Trust for their ongoing support. I'd also like to acknowledge the researchers who were recognized by the Killam Trust. You've been hearing about Killam Chairs, professors, and faculty prize winners, and I want to tell you about the Killam programs that support our trainees. The first award I want to mention is the Killam Postgraduate Medical Scholarships. These scholarships are given to senior residents training in clinical departments in the medical school. They are awarded based on academic, clinical, and leadership skills. Recipients are recognized as bringing expertise and dedication to the postgraduate programs and contributing to the quality of healthcare in the Maritimes and beyond. I offer my sincere congratulations to the 2024 Postgraduate Medical Scholars. Before we celebrate our pre- and postdoctoral Killam Scholars, I do want to take a moment to invite Hanika Nakagawa, Killam Predoctoral Fellow, and Shirk and NSGS Doctoral Fellow to share their research. Hanika's research engages with their elders in Indigenous communities on Tokunoshima and other Amami Islands to learn, examine, and document their stories and experiences with food and how it is shaped by and shapes the community in the aftermath of World War II. By outlining and identifying the threats to this most intimate aspect of their lives, they will help to voice the spirits of Amami identity for the next generations. Hanika's presentation is titled Stories of Slow Violence, Indigenous Identity, and Food and the Amami Archipelago.
Hello. So, the Amami Archipelago is located in Kagoshima, Japan. It is also home to the Amami indigenous people, which are also Ryukyu, circled in yellow. So the Kagoshima prefecture is red. Yellow is the Ryukyus. The Ryukyus have indigenous status at the level of the UN, but not recognized by Japan. Tokunoshima is the island that claims me. The problem that I will be addressing in my research is the fact that within the lifespan of my elders, they have seen layers of colonization. Japan, America, Japan again. This has resulted in military occupation that is only increasing, changes to their food system, the transportation, as well as how they live their social lives, because food is fundamental to everything. The research itself, I will be conducting yarning interviews that they have taken to be their own, weaving and folding them into long-winded stories, which I call shimatsumugi, which means island weaving. The elder stories reflect not just the changing food systems and how it impacts their daily lives, but also how a changing landscape is something to be learned from. So you need to learn how to learn from the changing landscape. Therefore, the education processes also matter. Also, documenting it is nice. So, why is the Killam important to me? One, I'm doing research that's in Japan. It's remote. It takes a long time to get there. So on top of my life expenses, I need to travel. Additionally, my father, also a Tokunoshima Islander, was a recipient of the Killam Prize in 2008 and 2009. His research was on language education in the archipelago. So my elders are actually very aware of the Killam Fund, which leads me to the most important point. The Killam represents, to me, validity. To my elders, also validity that their indigenous knowledge systems are being sought out by Canadian institutions, and the Killam sees them as important and worth listening to, and academically relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanika, for sharing your research with us today. Now I'd like to highlight our final Killam programs, so the Dalhousie pre-doctoral scholarships and postdoctoral scholarships. Designed to empower students from around the world to make significant contributions to their chosen field while studying in Canada, Killam scholarships and fellowships are the most prestigious awards granted by Dalhousie University. They are awarded to a select group of early career researchers based on academic excellence, demonstration of potential impact of the research, and the opportunities to enhance Dalhousie research activities. Over the past 50 years, Killam scholars and postdocs have been conducting research that has local, national, and global impact. We're pleased this year to welcome 18 new Killam predoctoral scholars and postdoctoral, and 4 new postdoctoral fellows to the Killam community. On behalf of the Faculty of Graduate Studies, I would like to offer my sincere congratulations to the new Killam predoctoral scholars and postdoctoral fellows who you can see on the screen behind me. Hopefully. Slide 23. Oh. All right, I'm going to chalk that one up to technical difficulties, and we're going to move on. But nonetheless, to all of our new scholars and fellows who are joining this year, thank you very much. So at this time, I'd actually like to welcome Bernie back up to the stage to present certificates to our Killam, or our student Killam Prize winners. These prizes are awarded above and beyond the scholarships. So first up, we have the George Cooper Killam Graduate Prizes. These prizes were established in 2016 to honor Dr. George Cooper, who was a Killam trustee for 34 years, 24 of those as managing trustee. We're pleased to have George Cooper here with us today, joining in the celebration. These awards are presented annually to the highest-ranked master's and doctoral students in each year's competition. As I announce these awards, I would ask that the prize winners please come up to the stage and receive their certificate. So first, I'm pleased to announce that the 2024 recipient of the master's level was Omer Sohel in the Department of Agriculture. So at this point, I'd also like to announce that the 2024 winner at the doctoral level was Jonathan Drew from the ID PhD. Jonathan? Congratulations to both of you. Excellent job. So next we'd like to highlight the Killam International Research Awards. So these awards were created in 2018 to recognize the 50th anniversary of the inception of the Killam Awards at Dalhousie and are generously supported by the Dalhousie Killam Alumni Fund. The award provides Killam scholars with a chance to gain global research experience by funding travel and living expenses for PhD students to work or study abroad at international institutions. We're very grateful to our Killam alumni for the kind donations that makes these experiences available to our students. And for those Killam scholars in the crowd, the next call for these applications is approaching. It's on February 14th, 2025. I would encourage each of you to look at the opportunity and take advantage of it. You can find out about what other Killam predoctoral scholars have done with these awards by visiting the Killam grad page. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Kevin Plucknett, our Killam Memorial Research Chair, or Killam Memorial Chair, who will be presenting his research. His presentation, titled Next Generation Manufacturing Advanced Ceramic Materials, showcases his work and how it is helping to establish Dalhousie as a leader in advanced materials that promises to help humanity meet challenges in everything from energy to healthcare. Please welcome Dr. Kevin Plucknett.
Okay, thank you, Adam. I'd like to start by thanking the organisers today and also the Killam trustees for the invitation. I hope that I can get this to work. Okay. So yes, I'd like to talk about some of our actually very recent work in terms of ceramic manufacturing. And I say very recent because this has been very much facilitated by support through the Killam Trust. So this is really stuff that we've just been doing in the last 18 months or so. And this is the group of researchers that I've got with me. And in particular, I want to highlight Achilles. I'll present some of her PhD work today, and she's actually supported again through the funding that we receive through the Killam Trust. Okay, so up until about 18 months ago, we did fairly traditional materials engineering work, ceramics, metals, perhaps some a little bit more exotic in terms of high entropy materials, different types of surface treatments. But as I say, with the Killam Award, we've been able to move into this new area for us, which is additive manufacturing of ceramics. I'm sure most of you are familiar with additive manufacturing. We're thinking about this typically in terms of polymeric materials, but we've been working more recently, as I say, on ceramics. You're building a part through a layer-by-layer addition, and I've got some examples up on the right-hand side there. These are all ceramic materials processed through 3D printing, and then finally a consolidation step to make them into the actual component you see. And to give you a sense of scale, I've actually got a laser pointer in my pocket. This lattice up on the top corner there is about 25 millimeters square, so these are quite high precision parts. This little critter down at the bottom is 3D printed, and he's been run through the micro CT in our lab, and you can get an idea when I talk about layer by layer addition, how that's actually produced. And there you see the layers that I've talked about. And if you want to get an idea of the scale of this part, I'm trying to dig it out from the bottom of my pocket. It's that. So this is 15 millimeters tall. It's made out of aluminium oxide. It's a very high hardness, very high durability ceramic material. Conventionally, we could not have made parts like that. It would have been essentially impossible, and now the 3D printing opens up all sorts of opportunities. The little set of concentric rings, for example, up there, you can't push those out from each other. They fit so snugly inside that you can pick them up by the outside. I should have brought them, actually, and the central rings would just drop down. But parts that are really impossible to make using conventional approaches. So how do we do this? Unfortunately, there's a lot of extra light here, but this is the printer that we have, so we're actually building up an equivalent type of lattice actually underneath here, and you're not going to be able to see it very well, unfortunately, with this video. It's not as showing. Can we dim the lights a little bit more? A little late now. But anyway, you can see the lattice part that's there. So what we're doing is we're adding sort of very thin layers of material all the time in terms of the process. If we think about the technology, it's really cross-cutting. It's a step change for us, as I've said before. And the application areas range from transportation, aerospace, things like that, right through to biomedical, filter production for water purification, all sorts of things. We're still trying to get our head around actually what we can potentially do with this. So Achilles' work, if you cast your mind back to that little lucky cat that I showed you, you could see the steps on there. They're very fine in scale. If you're thinking about that as an end user, you might want to use these parts as processed. So you wouldn't want to do anything, final finishing steps. But one of the things that did concern us straight away was the fact that it is a layered process. And so Achilles' work was looking at the effect of different orientation angles, the effect of things like build layer thickness, different parameters that we have to vary. And one of the things that she found was that if you increase the build layer thickness, which it allows us to produce a part much more rapidly, so instead of 15 hours or so to produce the part, it's maybe 4 hours to produce the part. Of course, our roughness goes up. So that's a bad thing. It's quicker to produce, but it's a bad kind of aspect of it. But at the same time, what we found was our friction coefficient in terms of the wear testing of these materials, it goes down. So that's actually a good thing. So we were kind of a little bit confused. In terms of the actual response for the wear rate, the wear actually goes up. So we've got a little bit of a quandary that we're trying to resolve. We can do microscopy to assess these materials, and you can see when we make very high precision parts with little thin build layers, they're very smooth. There's no steps that are visible there. But as you go up in thickness in the layers, you can see the steps. So we start to understand why the material wears more rapidly in that particular case. She looked at the same thing in terms of the orientation. So again, going back to the mannequin Echo, the little lucky cat, you have all different angles on the surface of that part that you're producing. If you're thinking about that in a wear environment, you'd need to understand exactly how they respond. And she saw exactly the same type of thing. So all of these intermediate angles, they're much rougher, but they have a lower coefficient of friction. That's actually quite promising. But again, their wear response was a little bit worse. when we look at this, we start to understand a little bit more why this is occurring. And as I say, the 3D printing of ceramics is so new that very few people have even started to think about properties such as tribology, the wear response of the materials. And here we can see that we get, obviously, the stepped layers that we saw before, because this is a fixed angle of 30 degrees, but we're seeing this secondary periodicity, these secondary steps. We now understand why that is. It's not been reported before. It's actually been reported by one other paper. But it's a factor we now have to bring into our consideration for the part design. But all of this got us thinking a little differently about, well, how can we utilize 3D printing in terms of perhaps both lowering the coefficient of friction and lowering the wear response? And that's led us to printing materials now that are surface patterned, so we can apply very fine scale surface patterning onto materials, and this is the case of an aluminous ceramic. We actually have been successful in both lowering the coefficient of friction and also lowering the wear. So this has a lot of implications. If you think about a hip joint, you might want to not have something that is actually wearing quite as much and has a lower coefficient of friction. So where do we go next? This is the last of my 5 slides, because I am whistling through this. The technology that I've shown you so far is one material. You're printing one material for a certain application. We're now moving into the scenario where we're trying to print multiple materials at the same time in the same part. The printer that we have to do this actually was the first of its kind in North America. There's a second one that's just arrived in Florida. And I'm going to show you a video of a part that's been printed by our industrial partners, Lithos, in Austria. And oops, I've jumped forward. How do I jump back? I'm going to probably have to go twice. Yeah, sorry. This is actually a multi-material print. So this, even though this is one part and everything is fused together, this face is a different composition to the rest of the material, as is this circular area in the bottom and also the other face. So this is really giving us a lot of opportunities now to start to think about, for example, a bioimplant, where you need some structural rigidity, but you perhaps need also a porous section of the material for osseointegration of bone. So this is actually the stage that we're at the moment. And that's essentially really all I've got to say. We've got a couple of other technologies that are coming again in February that will also allow different variants of multi-material printing, and a hybrid system, which again is actually the first, I believe, in North America, which actually allows us to print, machine, and so you've got both a subtractive and an additive component in the manufacturing. Okay, and there's another little lucky, we like printing lucky cats. Everybody likes a lucky cat, so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Plucknett, for your presentation, which is it's an interesting crowd to give that to, because you might have people coming saying, do this. So we'll see what happens with that. So as the formal portion of today's event comes to a close, I would want to take a few moments to thank all of those who have made this event possible. First and foremost, I want to gratefully acknowledge the generosity and the vision of Dorothy and Isaac Killam. I also want to thank the supervisors, graduate coordinators, and Killam Scholarship and Fellowship Selection Committee members for the contributions to the success of all of the students who are here. Killam Scholars, Fellows, and Alumni, obviously, for coming today and attending this event. This celebration was also supported by many people. I'd like to recognize the support of the Office of Advancement, the Office of the VPRI. I'd like to particularly recognize Aaron Stewart-Reed from the President's Office, Stephanie Terrio, Nikki Power, Mia Samara-Zik, and Josh Boiter, along with the whole team from FGS. It's been a pleasure to celebrate the remarkable, long-standing generosity of the Killams that has enabled the research and discovery here at Dalhousie that's had benefit locally, regionally, and across the globe. We're proud of the immensely grateful role that Dalhousie has to play alongside the Killam Trust in building Canada's future. And at this point, I'd like to invite all of you to move to the atrium outside, where there's going to be some refreshments, a chance to mingle, and perhaps opportunity to talk with some of our Killam scholars directly about what you've learned and what you're working on. I can't say we have the place until midnight, but there's no rush, I believe, to get out. So please do take some time, get to know each other, and enjoy the remainder of your afternoon.